so that's a wrap for the dyno tuning. We've spent a good amount of time comparing not only the actual just head-to-head comparison, but also just what kind of fueling changes were needed, which I can say they were relatively modest. You know, we 2 or 3% fueling adjustments to get to where we needed to be. Ignition timing, I tried some stuff just to see. Generally, that's not something you really spend a lot of time on. There was really nothing there. So here's what we've seen with this exhaust. So this is gonna be just a head-to-head with the stock exhaust that's been decored, and of course that is basically this is a racing style OEM exhaust, versus the Aero with, and here's another really critical thing, we tested with the little inserts in and out, does better with them in. It picked up like 0.7 of a horsepower consistently with the inserts inside. It's not a lot, but we're not seeing huge jumps anyway on a bike like this, so it's something that I think is worth doing. Also, ironically, it's louder with them in. I know that doesn't make any sense, but if you get one of these, you're going to see right away. I mean, it is audibly louder when you put the inserts in. It's strange. I don't think I've ever seen that, but for sure makes more noise with them in. I think it sounds pretty damn good. With them out, it was kind of like, bike like that, you want it to sound kind of gnarly, have some bark to it, as Tex said, and with them out, it was a little kind of sedate sounding. So with them in, it has that kind of nastiness that you heard in the video. So anyway, this is what we've got. So we, gains are not huge here. What we're seeing is probably the biggest delta is going to be right around the 9,500 RPM area, and we picked up 1.2 horsepower. Not a huge jump. This is one of those things that we didn't expect to see a massive gain here, and that's gonna, it's just not that big of a surprise. We knew that the stock pipe on this was pretty damn good, and so I hate to say it, I wasn't sure that we were going to see much of anything. It's something that we have to test, but I had heard that the original pipe on the bike was quite good, and the engine responded well to it. Now, something I'm told is that this pipe works better and better the more flow and head work and compression that this engine has. So that's kind of the next thing for us. We want to try to make this motorcycle, I'd like to see it in at least the mid to low 60s on our dyno, which would be quite the ripper. It's going to cost some money and take some development to get there, but we have kind of a game plan. So we've already ordered a spare cylinder head. We have an idea on a billy camshaft that we're going to run, some other odds and ends that we're going to do. So we're going to do some porting. We're going to do definitely a billet cam, and probably standard displacement, but a special piston, some other things. So what we will do also is show you, just so you can see our best stock run file. That's not it. There we go. And we'll show you, because this is the thing that's so important with these type of modifications. It's always incremental. You see, obviously if you do a bunch of stuff at once, you're going to see these big jumps, but generally it's all just done step by step, and at the end you have something really special. So what we'll do here, we'll just go ahead and take out this middle run, just so we can really show you just where, what kind of results we're seeing so far. So here you can see, we're picking up over 2 horsepower across the entire rev range, and in some areas down low, we're making like 4 horsepower. All throughout this mid-range area where the bike's really driving, making a pretty considerable amount of horsepower and torque over standard. So it's one of those things, we just keep chipping away at this thing. We want to keep doing what we can to improve it and make it better. I'm pretty happy with this. I do want to see 60 horsepower soon, so now we're just going to have to make those next steps. And that's on pump gas. I want to see 60 horsepower just on regular old 93 octane pump fuel. I know that I feel really confident that if we put MR12 in this thing right now, we'd crack 60 right away, but that's not what we're trying to do. So I want to do this pump gas, and then once we get it really tuned up, we'll throw some MR12 in there and see what it does. But yeah, anyway, that's what we're at. Bike looks awesome, sounds awesome, and definitely smoothed out our power delivery. Has a very linear power band now, and I think it's just a badass exhaust. So next we're going to continue on with our suspension stuff. That's going to be something that's really nice. Going to negate any weight savings that we've worked towards, I think, but I think it should really make this motorcycle handle super nice. And I think we're going to put a coolant overflow bottle on it. It needs one, especially if we go to the racetrack. It's going to be mandatory anyway, but I did have a little bit of coolant overheating coolant overflow on the dyno by, running the temperature up a bit. That's something I want to point out. This get situation that we have, this thing's pretty cool. This shows our traction control levels and stuff like that, but more importantly, it does have some good indicators on it. This light will flash if the temperature gets too high, and I think it does that around 210 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, this whole indicator will flash at around 750 RPM from red line. So pretty cool. I like that. It kind of get, with a single, sometimes it can be tricky feeling out the shift points. They kind of start to sound kind of flat up top. So I thought that was pretty helpful. It actually showed me that exactly where to roll off on the dyno or where to shift. Another thing I wanted to point out is we have gone ahead and put the hard elastomers in our X-Trig triple clamp set. We want to have as much feel as possible, and I was concerned about potentially having the clear ones, so those did come in, so we're going to pop those in. I think I actually might make some, or try to find some aluminum spacers that are right size, but make some hard mounts for it so we don't have any kind of damping at the bar. I don't really think that's... I don't think that's something I want. We're going to try both ways, but all the input and feel that we're getting, in turning the motorcycle, but also the feedback from the tire, I don't really want to lose any sensation there. So I think that likely we'll just go away with that, but we'll test both ways and let you know how we feel about it. Okay, so we've got our TTX here, and I'm actually sorry to say I really couldn't show you guys pretty much any of that. And I know that sounds silly, but we wound up, we recorded a little bit of the stuff that we were doing, and it was all kind of stuff that we're not necessarily interested in putting in videos because it's a little specific what we do to set up these shock absorbers for Supermoto. It's quite the different setup versus, say, what the shock comes with. And so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to show you a lot of that stuff, so please forgive me. But I will go into some things that I'd just like to discuss, and we'll give you some basic concepts of what we are changing. So this is the new TTX Flow DV, and basically what makes this shock so cool. So I don't know how many of you guys are really into suspension and stuff. Obviously we do a lot of this here. So people often talk about the setting. And the setting could be a number of things. Like if people say that in MotoGP or whatever, they could be talking about literally just the setup of the motorcycle. It could be just a geometry thing. It could be anything from clickers or springs or whatever. But the setting, when it comes to a suspension component, what the setting is referring to is the valving or the shim stack that's being used in the component, in this case, shock absorber. So this has basically multiple settings in it for high-speed compression, low-speed compression, and rebound. And so what we do with a Supermoto shock like this one, that starts off life as a motocross shock, is we're gonna figure out what length we want, and it's typically gonna be shorter. Not everyone does that. Like a factory KTM, which is 450 SXF based, they actually use basically a standard height suspension on that bike because the guy that rides it, he prefers the bike to simply be taller. He's kind of a bigger guy and that kind of thing. So that's not, something we typically do, but it's not unheard of. But so what we did, we shortened this. We set it to exactly the same length as the standard shock that comes on the 450 SMR. It's very easy to change if we need to do that, but this is done internally, and basically we're modifying the stroke of this shock. So that's something that's really not a big deal. The other big thing that's really cool about this shock, so obviously we've changed the setting to go from something that's not designed, for us really, I don't really do a whole lot of like proper Supermoto stuff where we're jumping really high in the air. I'm not really big on that. I do mountain biking and jumping and stuff, but when it comes to my Supermotos, we're talking very little jumps, not a lot of jumping, mostly asphalt stuff. It's typically just because we really want this thing to feel almost like a road race bike that's a bit softer. So we will change the valving quite a bit from something that's designed to basically take massive jumps and soak that stuff up, so something that's going to give us a little more support and feel in a road race setting. And we're going to start off with this spring. I have a feeling we're going to go up a little bit on the spring. This is pretty comparable to what you might run on a moto, but we're just going to just start there and just kind of see how that feels. What's amazing about that new shock, the DV, is basically this is our new adjuster that we get, which is high-speed compression. And back to that setting talk, what that adjuster does is it literally, so say with a shock absorber, just as a very broad example, not something you run in this, say a shock comes factory with a compression setting or a compression shim stack of a C5 is what it might be called. It's something that we see in a TTX like Superbike or road shock. And so in order, and that basically changes how it handles high speed, high velocity damping. And normally to change that, if you don't want it, what you would have to, like if you want to get a different feeling, you have to disassemble the shock and put a different shim stack in it. So what this is going to do is this is actually going to allow us to emulate changing that internal setting, changing that shim stack by simply opening and closing it. And what we were told is that basically having this right in the middle, say if you're at that C5 or what, you know, whatever setting, you can open it all the way, you know, which is going to be counterclockwise, and that would be the equivalent of say a C4 setting. Or you can close it all the way, and that would be the equivalent of say a C6 setting. So that's pretty badass, because now we have this higher level of adjustment and ease of use. Now if we want to try something while we're out riding, we don't have to pop this thing off and do a service. We can literally just turn a clicker. So pretty awesome. So that's the big thing about this. We've changed our length, we've changed our internal settings, and we've actually, again, started with a similar spring to what we might do on a moto. This is just something we're gonna just try. I'm gonna see how it feels. I typically don't like a ton of spring on my motorcycles. I like them to be pretty dynamic and have some movement. So we're gonna start there. I might go as high as say like a 51 or something. I don't know. We're just gonna start with that and see what happens. So next what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pop off the original shock. We've got the bike over there on the stand, and then we're going to go ahead and put this one on. And I think that's probably going to cover for this video. We've gone over a bunch of stuff. I think we're going to have another half-hour plus long video, so we want to get this thing out to you guys so you can see all this stuff. So we're going to go ahead and put it on and see if we can wrap this thing up. Here you can see the get, and Tex is taking everything apart to get ready to pull this shock out. By the way, ignore this. This is that's our tail light wiring, so that's kind of temporary. We're gonna see for sure to put this pipe, or excuse me, to remove this stock shock absorber or reinstall it for that matter. The exhaust system has to come off on the right side. We're hoping that the new shock may not require that because it's a little smaller. The WP one is pretty huge. So we'll confirm that as well while we're in here. Another thing I'm going to do actually while he's still taking stuff apart is I'm going to grab the scale, and it'll be interesting to see if the Ohlins weighs more or less. I wouldn't be surprised if it weighed more because it's a nicer piece, but we'll find out. Here's our shock, and if we can get this to sit on there, there we go. 4,318 grams. All right. Oh, yep. I will say 19. Yeah, 43.19. That's our baseline. All right, pipe is off, and now we can go ahead and pop the shock out. As you can see, the lower linkage assembly is completely loose, and this is basically how you have to get these out.
It was through here or through this.
I thought it was through that. Little clunky. Let's see how much it weighs.
I'll be able to get it to stay on there.
Yeah, it's the pads are on the bottom. Yep, so that is definitely lighter, 200 grams. So we are adding a good 200 grams with the Ohlins, which I expected because as much as we love KTM and stuff, we've been told that the build quality of one of these shocks is not the greatest. Basically, low quality components inside and out. And while we've never actually serviced one, never had a customer send us one to service, that's what we've been told. So generally, when you're upgrading something that's got billet components and really high precision damping like we have with this, you're going to gain some weight over a stock piece that's pretty basic. We're gonna replace those bolts. They're a unique thread pitch. They're what, 1.5s?
Yeah, 10 by 1.5.
Yeah, so that's, you're probably wondering, why are they still using those heavy bolts? That's because the we just don't have any 10 by 1.5 bolts in stock, so we're gonna have to get some from either Zeta or ProBolt is also another supplier that we use. If Zeta doesn't have something, we'll often just grab it from ProBolt. They're here in the US and they have all kinds of crazy odds and ends like that. All right, here we are. Shock is in place and basically everything's the same, although there is one small change at the bottom. Basically, this threads in from the other side, and you could probably spin the bottom of the shock absorber around to where you don't have to do that, but we didn't do this because the rebound adjuster is right there and there's just less stuff on this side of the motorcycle. So if nothing else, it may make it easier for us to make adjustments there. So now Tex is going to put the pipe back on and we can button this thing up.
Try anyway.
Lambda collect. There we go.
There we go. Have to get this outside.
There it is.
There we go.
Perfect. All right, so Tex has got this put back in. Everything's looking nice and tidy. And one thing we are going to do before we wrap this video up, and then I promise we're going to call it quits on this one because this thing's going to be like a day long, is we did get a bunch of our Zeta tie fasteners in. So right now they're all still the standard silvery titanium color. And what I'm going to do is just heat them up so we can get them to match these other tie burnt units in here. And then we're going to swap them out. And actually, I'm going to do another weigh-in on this thing because I'm just curious where we're at. We're probably pretty close to where we started, if I'm honest. But we've still got some tricks up our sleeve, and this thing's for sure going to be getting lighter in the very near future. But yeah, right now what we're going to do is just wrap this up, put some more tie bolts on, throw her on the scales. That's going to be it, I promise. Okay, that's a wrap. We've got this thing put back together. We're just going to show you before we weigh it in. Again, this is what we've just removed from this current batch, and I guess we could throw all those on the old scale real quick and see approximately how much we've weighed or what we've lost. And then of course we're gonna, as promised, do another weigh-in. They're just gonna fall off over and over again. A very effective method. Long ones don't want to stay on there. $288 grams, so that reasonably we can expect that we've lost maybe 140 grams or so, something like that, a little bit less possibly, but gives you an idea. You know, it's not a lot, but it adds up, and that's, you know, that's almost the weight difference between this guy and the original shock. So if nothing else, it would be nice if we could end up just under where we started with all these nice upgrades. There's some other stuff coming, you can probably guess, based on some recent modifications. It's going to also add some weight, so it's going to be difficult, but I think we can do it. Next, we're going to go ahead and drop this thing down, and we will see how much it weighs on our 1% scales. All right, we are going to zero the scales and go ahead and do a quick weigh-in. Do you need my help with that, or you think you got it?
I don't know.
I'll hold the rear so it doesn't scoot. Oh, yep.
Yeah, see.
Okay. All right. You got it? 238 pounds. That's less than where we were, isn't it? I think we were at like 240. So yeah. We've gone to a double exhaust. We've put a heavier shock on, probably heavier triple clamps, and we're still less. So this titanium stuff really works. And we've added a kickstand, of course. So yeah, it just goes to show you, you know, this a whole lot of tie, a couple of $1,000s worth of titanium, you too can save a pound or two. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. We have some really kick-ass stuff coming for this next. I mean, we're not even close to being done. We're going to go full Superbike Unlimited style on this bike. So next one should have some really tasty bits. But yeah, I think that's going to be a good way to wrap this one up. So once again, thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.